of the living entity. Babahu, the material body, Andam, the Brahmanda, Jagat, the universe, Yadaha, from which or from whom. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. From the total energy, the Mahat Tattva, I have manifested the false ego. The three modes of material nature, the five material elements, the individual consciousness, the 11 senses, and the material body. Similarly, the entire universe has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Supreme Lord is described as Mahatpada, which means that the total material energy, known as the Mahat Tattva, is lying at his lotus feet. The origin or the total energy of the cosmic manifestation is the Mahat Tattva. From the Mahat Tattva, all the other 24 divisions have sprung, namely the 11 senses, including the mind, the 5 sense objects, the 5 material elements, and then consciousness, intelligence, and false ego. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the Mahat Tattva. Therefore, in one sense, because everything is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, there is no difference between Lord and the cosmic manifestation. But at the same time, the cosmic manifestation is different from the Lord. The word Swarad is very significant here. Swarad means independent. The Supreme Lord is independent, and the individual soul is also independent. Although there is no comparison between the two qualities of independence, the living entity is minutely independent, and the Supreme Lord is fully independent. As the individual soul has a material body made of 5 elements and the senses, the Supreme Independent Lord similarly has the gigantic body of the universe. The individual body is temporary. Similarly, the entire universe, which is considered to be the body of the Supreme Lord, is also temporary. Both the individual and universal bodies are products of the Mahat Tattva. One has to understand the difference with intelligence. Everyone knows that his material body has developed from the spiritual spark. And similarly, the universal body has developed from the supreme spark, super soul. As the individual body develops from individual spark, as the individual body develops from the individual soul, the gigantic body of the universe develops from the supreme soul. Just as the individual soul has consciousness, the supreme soul is also conscious. But although there is a similarity between the consciousness of the Supreme Soul and the consciousness of the individual soul, the individual soul's consciousness is limited, whereas the consciousness of the Supreme Soul is unlimited. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. The Super Soul is present in every field of activity. Just as the individual soul is present in the individual body, both of them are conscious. The difference is that individual soul is conscious of the individual body only, whereas the super soul is conscious of the total number of individual bodies. Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Salagaya Chakshurunmilidam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Vandeham Sri Gurum Sri Udapadagammalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahaganaruganadanidam Dam Sajivam Sadhuidam Savadudam Parijana Saidam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaganalilidam Sri Vishakhanidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarupasya Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Padidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimade Lokanath Swami Namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswada Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shvinyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining this very auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam class. Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seveya. We hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, Nityam Bhagavata Seveya. Serve the devotees, hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can eradicate all the abhadras, all the impurities of the heart. So it's very powerful. Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. Just in come in contact, just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the glories of the Supreme Lord, glories of the devotees, it's all Bhagavatam. So one can eradicate the abhadra. That's a root cause of suffering in this world. So that's where exactly the Supreme Lord, Kapila Devi, is instructing to Mother Devahuti the entanglement in fruitive activities. So from the beginning itself in this chapter, and Kapila Devi is instructing and mentioning to Mother Devahuti how the living entity is too much entangled in the fruitive activities. So their intention is that to enjoy in this world dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So kama, dharma, artha, kama. So in order to fulfill all these material desires, they entangle in such a way that they themselves lost in this material world. So there is a verse in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. Krishna says, Asha pashas tadir badhir kama krodha parayana ihande kama bhogartham anyayarthena samjaya. So Asha pashas tadir badhir. Asha, the material desires. This is considered as pasha. Pasha means rope. Asha pashas tadir badhir. With this intense, immense material desires, one binds himself with this material world. And Sadar Badir, with such a difficulty, Kama Krodha Parayana, in order to just to fulfill the Kama, the material desires, and Krodha, then from that, the Krodha arises. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dhyayade Vishayan Pumsa, Sangaste Shubhajayade, Sangasangayade Kama, Kama Krodha Vijaya. From the material desires, this lust, the Krodha rises. So we can see that in this material world, how people are suffering with their own problems, their own anarthas, kama, krodha, moha, lobha, mada, malsarya. This is all because of we are completely bind with this material world, material attachment and sensory pressure, asha, pasas, tadir, badhe, kama, krodha, parayana, ihande, kama, bhogartham. In this material world, just to fulfill, satisfy the material lusty desires. Ihande, kama, bhogartham. Even anyaya arthena samjaya, anyaya. With what? With illegally. They will act illegally. So we can see that in this material world, they're killing the millions of living entities. I was hearing from Janananda Goswami Maharaj. Almost 10 billion fishes are killed every day. 10 billion. 300,000 embryos are killed in this world. 300,000 embryos are killed every day in this world. There are millions of people are, some way or other, misused or suffered with these atrocities of this world. Thousands of birds and other animals and cows are slaughtered every day just to satisfy the tongue. So this is mentioned that anyaya arthena samchaya, illegally. They're against the will of the Lord. So everybody, just to, this is the worst scenarios of it, the worst scenario. So everybody is entangled just to satisfy their tongue and the belly and the genitals. Some are engaged in the fruitive activities, some are engaged in abominable activities. Everybody is entangled in this material world. So that's where we can see that Kapila Devi is mentioning this to Mother Devahudi. Some engage in such a way that the fruitive activities, they go to the heavenly planets, they enjoy it there, then they come back again into this material world. Some are in such a way that they don't know what they are doing even. They just, engage in all these activities. They go to Pitraloka. And here Kapila Devi is using a very strong word for that. People are eating stool like hogs. The hogs, they have everything, the good, all the wonderful, bhoga or the food items are there, but they don't eat that. But what they do, they go and eat the stool. So these are hogs. So Kapila Devi is using very strong word. They go to Pitraloka and then they come back again and then do this again. So this way, Charvida Charvanas, Prahlad Maharaj says that Punas Charvida Charvanam, chewing the chewed, eating the what is eaten, and eating the vomit. This is the strong word which is used by our acharyas, because to understand, make us understand that the futility of this material entanglement. A devotees, this is the transcendental science. This is the actual. This is the pure science of the soul and the Supreme Lord. So that's where Kapila Devi is mentioning here. That again, that what is this material nature? So I was wondering when Kapila Devi was mentioning this is the entanglement fruitive activities, why this specific, the words is mentioned here, and that from the total energy, the Mahat Tattva, I have manifested false ego. So this is the key, that people are in misunderstanding. False ego or Nahangar, the I concepts of the Lord. That means everything, the false ahangar, which is considered as ahangar, or the contaminated consciousness, or that we can say that the selfish ego, which is separate from the Lord. Then the three modes of material nature, the five material elements, the individual consciousness, the 11 senses, the material body. Similarly, the entire universe has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So why Kapila Devi is revealing here, mentioning here that even this material world is the product or the creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The people, the individual thinks that, oh, this belongs to me. This is called the false ego that's mentioned here, the false ego, ahangar. So this individual ego, this false ego, which creates all this our material attachment, bondage, but not understanding that this also comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, but we completely immerse into this individual consciousness, selfish consciousness, or the ahangar, the false consciousness that leads to this material entanglement. So, in order to understand that, the Kapila Devi is revealing this to Mother Devahudi. And we can also see that in the 25th chapter of, no, the 26th chapter of the same, when Kapila Devi was mentioning here about this material nature to Mother Devahudi, Kapila Devi is very detailed explaining to, this fundamental nature of this material nature. It's very, very clear that it was very well explained there. So the reason for that, so that we understand that everything manifests from the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, Maya Dhyakshana Prakriti Suyade Sacharacharam, Hedu Nanena Kaundeya, Jagad Vivari Vartade. Maya Dhyakshana Prakriti, under my superintendence, that this entire universe is, working. Maya Dhyakshana Prakriti Suyade Sacharacharam, Hedu Nanena Kaundeya. I am the cause of all the causes. Hedu means the cause, the primary cause, the secondary cause. There is the efficient cause, like that, the reasons for that. Sarva Karana Karanam. So Krishna is the cause of all the causes, the efficient and the material causes. Everything is Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhuvo madhaha sarvam pravartade. So Kapila Devi is also revealing the same thing to Mother Devahudi. Everything comes from Krishna. But the foolish individual, the soul, doesn't understand this. So because of this lack of knowledge, and they entangled in such a way that in fruitive activities, they create the bondage. They create such a bondage, and they never. That's why the living entities are known as Nitya Badhas, eternally conditioned. So how they condition? Because of when they have come in contact with this material nature in such a way that with the false ego, ahangar, and then all these modes of material nature, these elements of the senses, mind, intelligence, and false ego, the contaminated consciousness, with everything they entangle in this material world. So it's very difficult to come out of it. That's why in the throughout this Kapilobadesham, and Kapilobadesham is almost like we can see that 8, 9 chapters of starting from the 25th chapter to the 33rd verse is almost like 8, 9 chapters that which is just mentioned about the Kabila, the Supreme Lord. The Kabila is also known as Kabila Vasudev, the Lord, the Supreme Lord. So the Kabila is revealing this to Mother Devahudi so that we can understand the importance of it. And this is where the Sankhya Yoga is also mentioning and revealing. That's where the numerical aspect of this material nature. That's where it's all come, the total energy that's called Mahatattva. So Mahatattva, we understood that. We went through that in very great detail, the 24 elements. The fundamental principles of this material nature is these 24 elements, Mahatattva, and then Mahatattva, before that, there is a Pradhan, there is an unmanifested material nature, and then there is a manifested material nature. The unmanifested material nature is known as Pradhan, and then the manifested material nature is known as Prakriti. And then we can understand that, how the Supreme Lord is, everything is coming into this material world. It's quite beautiful to understand that, this aggregated, gross elements, the subtle elements, the internal senses, the sense of gathering, the knowledge, organ, sense of, this is all Pradhana. So this is unmanifested material. This was not manifested yet. So, but the cause is the Supreme Personality of God. That's why it's here. He has come from the Supreme Lord. This everything is come from the Supreme Lord. You know that, dear devotees, that the Supreme Lord Krishna has nothing to do with this material nature. Even though we say that this everything comes from Krishna, but he is aloof from this material nature. His nature is not belongs to this material nature. Similarly, the individual source nature is also not belongs to this material nature, as Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter. Apareyam idastamanyam prakritim vidhime param jiva bhuta mahabhav. Apareyam idastamanyam. And before that, as Krishna says that, bhumirapo nalo vayu kam mano buddhire bacha ahangaram idiyam de bhinna prakritirashtadaga. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, these are my separated energies. Bhinna prakritirashtadaga. Then further Krishna says that, yes, apareyamidastvanyam, beyond this material nature, O Arjuna, there is a superior nature of mind. And all the living entities belongs to that superior nature. And Jiva Bhuta Mahabahu. But but they are entangled here in this material world. So in so many places, the Lord himself saying that, the living entities are entangled here in this material world, but this material world is not belongs to us. And as Srila Prabhupada says that the nature of the living entity is superior. There belongs to that superior nature, but that individual soul that they are come in contact with this inferior nature, it is an incompatible situation. They are in an incompatible situation, but this living entity belongs to the superior nature. We are not belongs to this material world. So like Srila Prabhupada gives that an example, like a fish. When the fish comes out of the water on the land, it struggles for its life. Similarly, when the living entities are come into this inferior nature or this material nature, they struggle for their life. This is an incompatible situation. That's why we are going through this birth, death, old age, and diseases, all this suffering and miseries, because of we are in incompatible situations. But the moment this individual soul has understanding that their nature, their eternal nature, Satchidananda Rupa, Satchisanand, they are eternal, full of knowledge and full of potency. Understanding this, come in contact with the superior Lord or superior nature, then they are in a compatible situation. That's why, dear devotees, when every acharyas, every scripture, the Supreme Lord himself revealing to us that, the futility of this material nature, but rather we come out of it. That's in the previous verses. Kapila Devi also says that only one can cut this bondage only by loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. The Bhakti Yoga, the devotional service. Devotional service is the top of everything. There is nothing that which can compare with this devotional service or the Bhakti Yoga. Only through the Bhakti Yoga one can cut this material bondage in this world. There is nothing else. So Kapila Devi is revealing that. So every scripture, every acharya has revealed this one thing, that unless and until we come to contact with the superior nature, the Supreme Lord, he'll be suffering into this material entanglement. That's exactly Kapila Devi is revealing to Mother Devahudi and understanding, make them understanding that what is this material nature. So it's very important that to dear devotees to come in contact with that superior nature, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So but there are different ways, and Kapila Devi is also revealing that one should have ahetuki bhakti, unconditional love for the Supreme Lord, unconditional engagement in the service of the Lord, unconditional loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Then we can cut this bondage from this material entanglement, from this material world. There is no other way. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that there is no other way. Harir Nama, Harir Nama. Harir Nama iva kevalam kalau nasteva 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 gadara. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. So we are all materially entangled here with this various natures of the Lord. So as is mentioned that, so this contaminated conscious false ego then further divided into three modes of material nature. How that is happening? Because of when the contaminated consciousness, this false ego, then come in contact with the goodness, the mind is created. So in everything is come from the Lord in such a way that depends upon the individual nature. Depends upon the individual nature. So here Srila Prabhupada also revealing in the purport that the Supreme Lord is completely independent. And also the living entity is also minutely independent. Not that completely free from everything. Minutely independent, because of the individual soul also has the nature of the Supreme Lord. So he is also independent, but minutely. But he is also conditioned. He is dependent upon in so many factors in this world. So as it's mentioned that Kapila Devi is revealing, because of that the nature, individual's nature, we are completely covered by this material nature, and that's come from the false ego, then the modes of three material nature, then our mind, intelligence, and ego, then the senses, then the working senses, the sense of perceptions, then the contaminated consciousness, the false ego. Then the false ego come in contact with goodness, mind is created. The false ego then come in contact with the passion, then the intelligence is created, and then the false ego come in contact with the modes of ignorance. All the sense and sense objects and the elements are created this way that the ego, the false ego, which causes all this, even the material creation, is come from this false ego. So all this been created by the ahangar. What is ahangar? The consciousness which is separated from the Lord. That is called contaminated consciousness. The consciousness which is separated from the Lord, which is separate from the Lord, is called the contaminated consciousness. Then that is the false ego that causes even the creation of this even material world. That's why, dear devotees, that it says that, some point of time we have been all, pure consciousness, we have been with the Supreme Lord in such a way that, but that individual, that independent, minute independence, then that started to create that the desires separately from the Lord. Then anybody has the desire separately from the Lord, then for them, this material world is created. That's why, since time immemorial, that we have been here in this material world, because of we have the mind, senses, body, everything is separate from the Lord. Our desires are separate from the Lord. So we are here in this world in such a way that we are completely trying to satisfy our own selves. But that is not the transcendental nature. That is a material nature. The transcendental nature is nothing but to serve the Supreme Lord, to please the senses of the Supreme, and then not the individual. So that's the complete, the nature, that's the perfection of the living entity. Engage in the service of the Lord so that the Lord's senses are pleased. Lord's, everything is pleasing for the Lord. And that's an eternal nature, that we are belongs to the superior nature. That is a completion of, that's a perfection of it. But the moment that when we think about that, I'm separate from the Lord, that my purpose, and every duty is to serve myself, my senses, my body, my intelligence. Is that my purpose? Is that my sole purpose? Then they separated from the Lord and they come into this material world. So as long as they have this kinds of consciousness, contaminated consciousness, false ahangar, and they think that I'm separate from the Lord, that my duty is here to serve myself, my body, and all this material nature, then they will be here for, you know, uh, as long as they have this consciousness. So it's very important, and Kapila Dev is revealing here how one can entangle in this material, but because of that, the selfish consciousness or false ego, the contaminated consciousness, and then even that is come from the Lord. Because why? Because of the individual is desiring for it. So that minute independence that one has, that they are desiring for it, because of that, then we are here entangled here in this material world. Everything is come from the Lord, everything belongs to the Lord, but it is that minute independence. This is that we have that free choice, free will. The free will, the choice that it is up to us. That's minute independence that Lord is saying here. So with that minute independence, what happens? We desire. So we desire that, okay, I need this material world. So I have those so many unending desires, unending list of material desires, and then we are trying to fulfill and satisfy all those. Then we are here in this material world. So this way we completely entangled here. So Kapila Devi is very clearly mentioning that even though everything is come from the Lord, but the individual is having this contaminated consciousness and false ego. They think separately from the Lord. They do everything separately from the Lord. They completely entangled in this material world, and they're lost in this material world. So thank you, dear devotees. With this note, I would stop here. And thank you so much for joining this very beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam class. Hare Krishna, Gandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it's 7 o'clock, and if you have any questions or any comments, you can post it into the Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Anybody else anything to add before we conclude?
Maharaj's Japa retreat, Prabhu.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the devotees, today the His Holiness Dhampat Swami Maharaj's retreat is starting. Today's section is 6:30 p.m. onwards, and then 8 o'clock. Then tomorrow morning, 7:45 onwards, and Mangalarti, of course, before. And then it goes till 7, 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. And Sunday is full of chanting. So as mentioned that, this is our greatest opportunity, dear devotees. First of all, associate with the saintly people. Second, with the devotees. And this is all Bhagavatam. This is all Nityam Bhagavata. Nityam, Bhagavatam. So don't miss this. And this is our greatest fortune. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam association, chanting of the holy name. This is our great fortune. There is nothing, great fortune that in this world. Even little bit of, right? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha. Even little bit that we get it. So it will be.
How will I be able to tell you?
So thank you so much. So thank you so much for all those. Please try to join and also send this information to everybody else and share with others, those who would like to participate. So absolutely free, no charge for it. That's the announcement for this weekend. Also, please try to distribute books. The Gita Jayanti Marathon is on. And everybody, please try to distribute books and talk to the people and whomever is, and at least distribute a book, one book, Srila Prabhupada's book every day. So this way that we can achieve our target of 5,000 books. Okay, thank you so much. So let us conclude today's section.
Is this available on Japa Retreat online?
I mean, hopefully we would try to, I think that will be also on the Zoom, or how the coordinators want to make it. Yes, probably not at the beginning. Maybe recorded or something. Send it later or something. May not be online. Then people won't even join, right? Even if it's online. So right. Maybe after that. Yeah, I'll check, Mataji. How is that going to coordinate?
No, when I registered on the online, they were giving option. Do you want to do online or you want to do person?
Oh, I see. Maybe then it may have. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay. So let us conclude. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubhyeva cha Padidanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Gandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Kodi Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Gauri Premanande. Hare Hare Bol.
Thank you, Simon.